Back on with news just coming through ahead of his visit to Morbi on Tuesday. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has chaired a high-level meeting to review the situation on ground. He's been briefed on the rescue and relief operations which have come to a conclusion by the evening today. As of evening, almost all the teams except 2 or 3 teams who are still looking for one child who's missing have already departed for their bases. The Prime Minister has emphasized on ensuring that those affected get all possible assistance. The high-level meeting was also attended by Chief Minister Bhupendra Patel and the MOS Home and the Chief Secretary and DGP of Gujarat. So Harsh Sanghvi also present there. They have been, both Bhupendra Patel and Harsh Sanghvi have been in Morbi since late last evening. And they have been there overseeing the rescue operations altogether. The Prime Minister has very clearly said that all possible help needs to be extended to the families that have been affected because of this tragedy. Earlier in the day, while speaking on 2 separate occasions, the Prime Minister appeared very, very emotional. He has a very strong connect and a very old connect with not just the people of Gujarat, but more importantly Morbi, where he served in the past as a pracharak too, and he was also part of the rescue efforts when the earthquake hit this region. Now the Prime Minister cancelling all his programs. He's in Gujarat over a 3-day election tour. He's cancelled all his public rallies and roadshows and just doing more of what is the state-bound requirements and certain formalities which he could not skip. He has waited for the rescue operations to be completed and for all the work to be done after the tragedy to go ahead and then pay a visit to the people at Morbi. So he will be there in Morbi on Tuesday. These are the pictures of the high-level meeting that he has just chaired and taken stock of the situation on ground. Moving on, ladies and gentlemen. Let's set up this face-off. In our country, which is so diverse, has many cultures, many communities, and each community have different sects and different groupings, and everybody has a different interpretation of their own personal laws. So when what is in law in the interest of the people of the country, with the state seen as one solid entity and its citizens seen as one single entity, when it clashes with these individual personal laws, what should prevail? Now let's come to the aspect. Where do the clashes happen? The clashes happen when cases of marriageable age, because there are certain sects like the Shariat and even other community, ladies and gentlemen, where they believe that when the boy, girl attain puberty, they can be married off. So if be it 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, irrespective. But what does the law precise say? 18. Any marriage of a girl under the age of 18 is not constitutionally valid. Now there are demands that there should be parity. Both boy and girl should be brought to the same age. But right now it's 18 and 21. Now, abolition of polygamy as a practice. Now state says polygamy is not allowed, but there are certain communities, sects where more than one marriage is allowed. So what should prevail? Maintenance for women under the CRPC. Then equal succession and inheritance. And of course, marriages as contractual obligations. 6. Abolition of the practice of iddat. Now these are all points where personal law under the Sharia and of course what is the CRPC or what the law all collide, they don't converge. Now, when it comes to POCSO, that's the POCSO Act. Can personal law override POCSO? Is there in this entire fight between common code and personal law, is it high time that there is a certain uniformity whereas these matters are concerned? Ishkaran Bhandari and Tausif Ahmed Khan, advocate and political analyst, with us. Namaste, festive greetings, gentlemen, and good to see you on the show. Let's go straight up. It's between the two of you. I request you to yield and allow the other, just like you would do in a courtroom. But here I am no judge. The jury is the people, and you are the two voices advocating your thoughts. So let's start with Ishkaran Bhandari. Common code versus personal law. How do you interpret this? Because Ishkaran, if a Karnataka court has said that POCSO prevails over the personal law, there are other courts in our country which have ruled the other way, who have interpreted it in certain aspects. They have interpreted it the other way, saying that your community believes this, so I cannot supersede because we are not under jurisdiction. So then are the courts to blame?
No,
or is the interpretation different?
Let's start with the basic.
Ji.
We are still operated in large part. Britishers were ruling India in revenue and law,
for which they made uniform laws. You have Indian Contract Act, you have Specific Reef Act, governing your revenue aspects, contractual aspects, business aspects. They did not want to have dacoity, murder, they want to extract resources, take them out. So we had a uniform criminal code. The only thing they did not care about is, either for Hindus, Muslims or any community, is how you marry, how many times you marry, when you marry, etc., etc., etc. They had no business. They didn't care about it. They were not bothered about how India is governed. So they didn't care about it. And we had personal laws. So when our constitution was being framed, we brought in Article 44, which said that states endeavored to have a uniform civil code. Let's pause here. That time, Hindus also are having personal laws. Muslims are also having personal laws. So obviously, as constitution makers thought, at one go, we will regulate, modernize all the personal laws together, because nobody is allowed to have a personal law. What happens is, Jawaharlal Nehru says Muslim community is not ready for reform. It is an internal matter, the typical leftist line, secular, so-called secular line, and he brings in a Hindu code bill, which was omnibus bill, which regulated all aspects, marriage, divorce, succession, etc., etc. Now the ill effects of that, Supreme Court from 1980, Shah Banu onwards, has been saying we need a uniform civil code in the country. We need to have a certain marriageable age. Section 494. Do you want anybody to be able, under his personal law, to marry multiple times? Can that be tolerated? And where are all these women empowerment groups? Where are all these feminist groups? Why are they not opposing a man being able to marry multiple times under the law? So these are very basic questions. Or where are all these child right activists which would normally scream if a minor child, technically a 16-year-old, can marry a 70-year-old? You're not allowed to vote. You are not allowed to own property. You can't sign a basic, simple contract because you are a minor. You don't have agency. But your entire life could be decided at the age of 16. So it is but obvious that we need a uniform civil code which takes care of all these evils. And just as the Muslim community has submitted to the uniform criminal code, and they agreed to uniform civil code in all Western democracies, I don't think so it can be any debate except of vote bank politics to oppose it.
But see, in this case, Karnataka High Court, because it was POCSO and it was Shariat that came into play, so that's why it is the issue is Shariat. But I'll tell you, even in Hindu communities, there are a lot of communities where the girl children are married off very, very early. Now, child marriage has become a criminal aspect and it stopped. But the fact is that there are many who would want it as their practice. When you talk about polygamy, even that was prevalent among the Hindu community for a long time. But where do you stand, Tausif, if I may ask you this? In this choice, in a society like India, in a country like India, should there not be a uniform rule for anybody or everybody? Because let's say today, hypothetically, in your case, now you as a Muslim get married to a girl or a person from another community. Now, in that, if there is a dispute tomorrow, what should prevail? Your law, your personal law, or the partner's personal law, or should there be a common law through which both of you will get justice? This is where it fundamentally stands up, doesn't it?
See, law is very clear. If there is an inter-caste marriage, then they are governed. These marriages are governed by Special Marriage Act, which is more or less the provisions of Indian Marriage Act. Then there are Hindu Marriage Act. Then we have personal law of Muslims. You see, a demand for the uniform civil code has always been made, right? And especially when there is a election around the corner. There was a petition filed recently in the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court has rejected to entertain that petition. Just 1 or 2 days ago, Supreme Court refused to entertain that petition to implement a uniform civil code, because the provision of uniform civil code is there in the Constitution. It was discussed in the Constituent Assembly with all the draftsmen of the Constitution. When they were all debating the contents of the Constitution, they discussed about the Uniform Civil Code, and they have come to a conclusion that we cannot enforce the Uniform Civil Code. And then as recent as 2018 Law Commission recommendation is there, which says that the Uniform Civil Code at present is neither necessary nor desirable. So these are the facts. Now, what is the contrast to it? Now we see that one state government has passed an order saying that we are going to constitute a committee to look if Uniform Civil Code can be implemented, and only in state. You see, the provision is about applying the Uniform Civil Code in entire country. Now, one aspect to Uniform Civil Code is the marriage law that we were just discussing.
Correct.
A marriage in Islam is a contract. Marriage in Hindu religion is a union for 7 births. And then in Christianity is again, exchanging vows where they say I do. Now, this is the concept which comes from the religion, which is there in practice, in custom, since time, immemorial. And on the other hand, there are other aspects of civil law as well, like, for example, a tax benefit that a member of a Hindu undivided family gets, which does not apply to a person from another community. So when you discuss about Uniform Civil Code, what do you mean by that? Is the intention only to politicize? Is only
No,
to
the
target
intention is to
Muslim
bring a certain
personal
level
law?
of parity. See, I'll tell you why. Politics तो आप तौसीफ आप भी जानते हो, सब जानते हैं. In our country there is no time when there is no election. That's how the system is currently, because we are such a large country, and every state, some state or the other, is always perennially in election mode. Something municipal election चल रहा है तो election, assembly election चल रहा है election, कुछ तो चल रहा है कहीं ना कहीं, कोई तो बाईपुल चल ही रहा था. But let's keep that aside. I'm just saying from a larger point of view. Don't you think that we are at a point where we need to do it? Because our founding fathers also decided on a lot of things, that India is not socialist, India is not secular, but we find those words forcibly added to our constitution. So are we fighting that today, saying let's revert to back the original print, where it said that it is just a sovereign democratic republic? So constitution also went under changes. At that time our founding fathers said our country is not perhaps ready, certain communities are not ready. But are we not ready today? How would you give somebody justice in these 5-6 cases? Adoption, inheritance, at parity as far as marriage is concerned, divorce is concerned. You know the 5 aspects which come under the ambit of personal law. Iskaran, please respond.
Just one fact, Anand. Our founding fathers thought our country is ready for a uniform civil code. They brought Article 44. Our first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, did not think Muslim community is ready. There's a fundamental difference between the first Prime Minister elected under the Constitution and the drafters and the framers of the Constitution. The second point blank question to Mr. Khan. You want 16-year-old girls to be able to marry 50-year-old men, or do you want it to be stopped? Do you think man should have multiple marriages in today's world or not? 2 simple questions.
No, and not just that. If man should have multiple marriages, then will you stop a woman from having multiple marriages? And in that case, can a 50-year-old woman marry a 16-year-old boy? And will you stop that? Or will there be any parity? And the other thing is, who gets justice and who doesn't get justice, on what basis? Because courts turned around and in certain judgments turned around and said, despite that the Special Marriage Act doesn't apply, Tausif. It said that you have to decide whosoever, and they'll lend towards one community's pratha versus another community's pratha or sex pratha. So these are aspects. Shouldn't we have some clarity on it today in 2022? Tausif, final word. I have to wind. Actually,
you see the age of the girl's marriage, needs to be debated whether it should be 16, should be 18 or 21. Now, if you're talking about, multiple marriage, one side, the law has decriminalized adultery. And on the other side, you are harping on the fact that it is a union for 7 years and there should be no
so whatever it is, the law.
Why have you
what the scriptures say? What the scriptures say is different from what the law says. There are different. So don't try and mix the scriptures with what the law says. The philosophical interpretation is different in terms of the union of the minds and body, and what the contract says. It's still a contract. It's a binding contract between 2 people. Now I have to wind up. I've run over time. We'll take this forward. Thank you very much. Winding up the right stand. Brass Tacks with Anusha follows.